Hey guys, and welcome back to the Disgustingly Easy podcast, a podcast for women who are here and in it for the long game. I am your host, Bec Cameron, and it is so good to have you here. Now, today I'm going to try not to trigger the fuck out of you with this conversation. However, I've noticed in the DMs and in the conversations I've been having in long game, whether people are doing a fitness program or not, there seems to be some common themes popping up as we move towards the end of the year. Now, before we even start, I want you to take a breath. I want you to feel grounded. I want you to just take a little moment for yourself. Now, today we're talking about a mindset that almost every woman I coach has ever struggled with, especially my neurodivergent friends. And it's the one I spent years trapped in myself. Just because you can't hit your big goals right now doesn't mean you do nothing. This episode is for you if you are in a season of low capacity, low spoons, high parenting responsibilities. Maybe you're going through some parental preference, changes in routine, burnout, neurodivergent overwhelm, motherhood chaos, business is going nuts, or maybe life is just really lifing. You know those times when your brain starts to whisper, well, if I can't do that, I may as well do nothing. Today, we are lovingly blowing that shit up with compassion, but also with a little bit of straight talk. Think of me as your big sister who has been there, done that, and just generally wants the very best for you, because this all or nothing mindset is keeping you stuck, exhausted, and convinced that you are the problem when really it's the system that you've been taught to use. So let's get into it. Now, I want to take you back for a second, back to a version of me, and maybe there's a version of you in here too, who genuinely believed that the only acceptable way to train and to apply themselves in the context of health and fitness was to make it basically a second full-time job. I was doing ridiculous things like working out at CrossFit every single day, sometimes twice a day. And the wildest part, if I missed one session, my brain was like, well, that's it. You failed. You fucked it. You may as well quit everything. And then I would stop for weeks at a time. It sounds extreme, but let's be honest. So many of us have done something like this. So many of us have memories of this or versions of ourselves that have done this. You do 3 days of a workout and you miss the Thursday, you bin the whole week. You have one off meal, suddenly everything is ruined. You slept in and you didn't do what you said you were going to do. Well, I guess we'll just start again next year. And as we creep closer to the start of the next year, that becomes more and more tempting as we go. And I need you to hear this. This cycle is not a lack of willpower. It's actually a strategy that you have become accustomed to and something that you continue to play out. Now, let's bring in the neurodivergent layer of this, because this really matters. All or nothing thinking is really common with neurodivergent women. And it doesn't really matter if you're diagnosed, if you're self-diagnosed, or if you are just someone who leans towards that kind of conversation or feels like you identify with the things that I say. The reason that we lean towards the all or nothing thinking is, one, we crave clarity, and ambiguity makes our brains itch. Rules feel safe. If I follow the rules perfectly, I'll get the result, except our rules are often impossible. We are also dopamine driven. So high intensity equals high dopamine. Big plans, big changes, big dopamine. Go hard or go home feels really exciting until the dopamine runs out and we no longer give a shit. Number 3 is that we use movement as an emotional release. Now, I have been through times in my life where I've been under a lot of pressure. My early years as a social worker, I suddenly felt really inclined to find these outlets where I was doing more, pushing more, going harder, because exercise became like a pressure valve. So missing a session felt like I was losing out on my only coping strategy, and at a time where I hadn't developed any other strategies. This can create panic, guilt, urgency, and all of that builds up internally until we collapse. We love to mask is another reason. So we build routines that look really good externally and perhaps make us look like we're doing better than we actually feel. And we often do go straight to the black and white thinking. It's perfect or pointless. It's all or nothing. It's every day or never again. And if you've ever been stuck in this loop, again, I really want you to be hearing you when I say this is not about being broken. This is about your brain doing exactly what neurodivergent brains do when we are living amongst a system or a society where things aren't necessarily built for us. So we see these things, we see people talk about these concepts, and then often our brains can take it to an unholy extreme. Now, I do want to mention the elephant in the room, which is something that I don't think comes into conversation as much as it should. And that's because I'm sure it's laced with elements of shame, elements of fear. People don't really want to talk about it, but it's the body image urgency. And with the rise of skinny talk, with skinny culture being so back in vogue, and we're seeing things kind of come out thinly veiled as though they are to do with wellness. Need I remind you that skinny does not equal well, and the kind of skinny that is being promoted on places like TikTok is actually the kind of skinny that leads to incredibly complex, long-lasting health complications and health issues. Now, a lot of us chase fitness goals from a place of I really hate how I look and I need to fix that now. And that urgency can feel really productive, motivating. It can feel powerful for a minute, but it's something that I'm going to explain it from an NLP or a neuro-linguistic programming lens. And I want you to understand in the context of it being away from motivation, meaning I am feeling super motivated to get away from this uncomfortable feeling. And that's why we often have these times in our life where you maybe see a photo of yourself and suddenly feel an incredible compulsion to get your health and fitness in order. Someone makes a comment and you feel very uncomfortable with the comment and you feel an incredible motivation to get your health and fitness in order. This is away from motivation. And look, away from motivation does work briefly, and there are times when it can be useful. However, it gets you running, it gets you panicked, it can get you hustling. And here's the trap. The moment you're a little less uncomfortable, the moment all of the hard work that you put in with that motivation in mind starts to pay off, you lose the very motivation that started the whole thing. So if you imagine it as you're running away from a tiger, as you're running away, you're going to be super motivated. But as the tiger, hopefully the tiger gets further and further back into the distance. I probably should have chosen a slower animal, but we're just going to run with it. As the tiger gets further and further away, you are going to start to slow down and run slower and slower. This is away from motivation. And by and large, when we're motivated by a lack of self-worth, when we're motivated by seeking external validation, when we're motivated by things that are prompting a discomfort within us and within our sense of identity, we want to get away from it as fast as possible. This is why I see women not joining the long game, because when I tell them it's going to take them a year, in their head, or perhaps not even consciously, subconsciously, they realize they're not going to be able to escape the feelings that they're feeling fast enough. And so they don't want to buy into a program that's telling them it's going to take a year. So the moment you feel a little less uncomfortable, you lose the very motivation that started the whole thing, because we're no longer desperate. We're no longer in a sense of crisis. Your brain goes, we're fine, stand down, and the motivation evaporates. And this is why you'll hear people say all of the time, I was so motivated at the start and now I just don't know what to do. And then we blame ourselves. And it's not you, it's the type of motivation that you're using. So when you can hack this and apply this to your life and your lifestyle, you are going to see a radical change. Now, the urgency of away from motivation burns out neurodivergent brains. ADHD especially is fueled by urgency, and the urgency is a really shitty long-term fuel source. It likes the dopamine, but it spikes, then it crashes, and it keeps you sprinting, but to the point at which you're then unable to walk, and it creates the hyper focus until the threat disappears. Now, neurodivergent women are burning themselves to the ground with this aesthetic urgency because it feels like the only way to move. Urgency is not sustainable. Urgency is not nourishing. It is not regenerative. It does not build identity. It builds panic. This all brings me to the actual solution. And I know I'm talking fast, but I'm very passionate about this stuff. You might need to listen to this potty a couple of times to fully conceptualize, or if you're in the long game, bring the conversation to the forum and let's chat about it there. The shift I want you guys to experience, we want to use towards motivation instead of panicked, insecure, body conscious, shameful, away from motivation. Not running away from something we hate, but running towards something we desire. This kind of motivation is regenerative. It is identity building. It is stable. It is sustainable, and it is healthier for neurodivergent systems. And it actually aligned with the kind of life that I know everyone is wanting to build. Whilst we might get distracted by the aesthetics for a while, we know deep down that we actually value health, sustainability. We value things that take time. We value the effort that we need to put in. And that's why the lean towards aesthetics is always going to be so short lived. Towards motivation is not, I hate my body and I need to change it. It's, I want energy. I want stability. I want strength. I want capacity. I want my life to feel bigger than my to-do list. And I want my vitality to feel endless. It's not panic, it's vision. It's not urgency. It's a desire for more. It gives you something that stays alive even on the days when you're tired and you're overwhelmed, overstimulated, and under-resourced. And those times where that lean or that shift towards the aesthetic goals or the aesthetic results starts to feel completely unaligned. What I think we need to normalize in order for us to kind of get there, you will not always be in a season of big goals. And as we move into the quote unquote silly season, as we move into this time when we're starting to feel constricted, when we're starting to feel the pressure, when we're starting to be more dysregulated, even the pure fact that Christmas shopping means you have to go to the shopping center more. And for me, that means bright lights, fluorescent lights, fucking Christmas carols, so many fucking people having to engage with shop assistants and do all of these things I generally try to avoid, even during seasons like this, when you feel like you're maybe in more of a survival mode. We need to acknowledge that sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's all we have capacity for, but that doesn't mean that we stop. In fact, continuing through, whilst maybe we turn down the intensity and the frequency of the things that we are doing, instead of stopping, I want you to consider that continuing through is the kind of thing that's going to make you unstoppable. If you're in a low capacity season right now, or you know that as we move into everything that comes with the holidays, if you know that you are generally inclined to drop the ball and go, it's all too hard when it comes to focusing on your own health, your own wellness, your own regulation, doing the things that you know keep you steady. I want you to consider that the thing that is going to amplify all of your anxiety, all of the intrusive thoughts, the thing that is going to amplify all of those things that make you feel unsafe in your own body is abandoning yourself just because you can't do it perfectly. We don't stop, we shift. We scale things up and down, we soften or we adjust. Like I said, you can turn up the frequency and intensity in times where you have high capacity, and you can turn it down, but we don't stop. We become unstoppable. Consistency isn't built through intensity. Consistency is built through a constant connection to your habits. And long gamers will tell you that they will hear me say, week in, week out, stay connected to the habit. In terms of practicality, what can that look like? Reduce the goal, not the standard. So your standard stays the same. You're a woman who shows up for yourself, but maybe your actions scale to match your capacity. Maybe instead of 3 workouts in a week, you do 1. Maybe instead of actually going and doing your workouts in a time where you are experiencing slight burnout, you go and you take that time for yourself to do something different. Maybe you go to a cafe. Maybe you go for a meditation. Maybe you go to yoga. Instead of doing 10,000 steps every single day, maybe you just make the conscious effort to go for a walk. Maybe instead of perfect meal plan and perfectly planned everything, you think What can I do to make sure I'm eating plants and I'm eating protein? Smaller doesn't mean worse. Smaller means sustainable. And the thing that's going to make you feel shit is giving up on yourself, not turning down the intensity, turning down the frequency. Because when you stay connected to your habits, you stay connected to yourself. We want to build our rituals for any energy level. Your habits should have a version for high energy, medium energy, low energy. I just want to lie on the floor and cry energy. Because remember, disgustingly easy is about staying connected to the habit. Your life isn't linear. You're not going to be on this upward trajectory, just getting better and better and better and doing more and more and more forever. The way we stay consistent for the long game is through the ebb and flow. We also need to identify what are your non-negotiables. And I know that we had our community call this week for those who are in the long game where we talked about over this period, what are your non-negotiables going to be? How do they need to change? Can you adapt them to fit the current things that are going on in your life and your lifestyle? This is your anchor, because when capacity increases, you build from there. Another thing to remember is that we need to stop confusing urgency with importance. Urgent doesn't mean aligned. Fast doesn't mean better. Slow doesn't mean pointless. Your brain is being conditioned to value panic as productivity. And culturally, we can sometimes fall into a little bit of drama when it comes to our health and our fitness or how we take care of ourselves. And I want you to step back from that drama, step back from those conversations, step back from anyone in your environment who is perpetuating this cycle of how complicated and convoluted life has to be. And remember that we need to all unlearn that together. You get to decide what you do. You get to decide what your baselines are, your non-negotiables. Health and fitness is not nearly as complicated as people want it to be. And often they want it to be complicated as a justification for why they can't participate. All right. The last thing I want you to think about is the line in the sand when it comes to your identity, remembering that your 1% days count just as much as the days when you're doing really well. And I've said it a lot in the check-ins, in the videos that I do for you guys when you submit your check-in every fortnight. I've said it a lot in the check-ins lately. This is where the work counts. It's not the days where you're kicking ass, where you're doing your workouts, when you're feeling as though you can commit to absolutely anything, where your capacity is higher, where you've got ample spoons. That's not where the work matters. The work matters here when all you have is 1%. All you have is 10%. When I barely did anything, but I didn't abandon myself is the line that you're going with. Every small action is a vote for the woman that you're becoming, the standard that you're setting, and remembering that consistency is not about perfection. It's about staying connected to the habit. If this is hitting home for you, and if you are kind of feeling like you're staring down the barrel of a very tense and stressful time over the next 4 to 8 weeks, I want you to take a moment after this episode and ask yourself, what version of my goals is available to me in this season? Where am I confusing not perfect with not worth it? Another one would be, what would my 10% version of showing up look like today? What am I moving towards versus away from? And where can I shift that perspective when it comes to my motivation? These aren't cute prompts. They are nervous system retraining, identity building, pattern interrupting. Before I leave you, I just want you to take a moment, take a breath, and hear me when I say this. You don't need to hit your big goals right now. You don't need the urgency. You don't need the punishment. You don't need a perfect routine. You need connection. You need compassion. You need disgustingly easy, consistent action that is going to build the identity of a woman who shows up for herself without burning herself alive to do it. And if you're in a low capacity season, you don't stop. You can become unstoppable. Just turn down the frequency, turn down the intensity, and stay connected to the habit. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are not starting again. You are simply learning a new way to lead yourself. And this is the long game way. Now, if you're listening to this and feeling challenged or perhaps feeling inspired or feeling anything in particular, I would so love for you to bring that conversation over onto Instagram, put it in your stories, whether it's a quote from this episode or something that's come up for you. Maybe it's a reflection on the journal prompts, and let us know how you are showing up for yourself in the run up to what is often a challenging, emotional, highly charged season. Of course, if you're not in the long game and you loved this conversation, if you are thinking, where has Bec been all my life? Then you need to jump over to my DMs, send me a message that says ready, and you and I can have a chat about what it might look like for you to get a disgustingly easy jumpstart on your health and your fitness journey, no matter what season you're in, no matter your capacity, no matter your spoons. And of course, remember, when nothing is certain, anything is possible. You guys have got this, and I've got you.